What's up, guys? Today I'm on the road again, only as far as London today. I'm off, first of all, for a very exciting lunch meeting, and frustratingly something that I cannot tell you anything about right now, but it's very exciting, believe me. And then I'm heading over to Canary Wharf to give one of my F1 talks to an events company. But today I wanted to talk about the Ferrari situation. And, you know, lots of the comments in my own YouTube channel have been particularly post-weekend about how Ferrari are kind of putting all of their belief in Sebastian Vettel, and maybe they're backing the wrong guy. Maybe that absolute one-man belief in Vettel could end up costing them points, in fact arguably has already cost them points, and therefore could end up costing them a shot at the world title. And when I started to think more about that, it started to ring a number of massively loud alarm bells for me. And the reason it rings alarm bells for me, and I'm sure some of you may have already made this connection, but think back to 2007 at McLaren, when I was there, when I was inside that McLaren garage, and we had a double world champion in Fernando Alonso. We had the current world champion coming into our team. He'd been promised by our boss Ron Dennis at the time, even if only off the record, he'd been told, yeah, of course you're the number one driver. Of course, you'll get the full support of the team. Because the teammate is this rookie, is this guy who, he needs to build experience before he comes anywhere near approaching a championship challenge. So, of course, we're going to put everything behind you, Fernando. Very, very quickly, it became apparent that Lewis Hamilton didn't necessarily need the benefit of experience to be able to challenge for a world title and to be able to mix it at the front of the field. We had undoubtedly the quickest car on the grid at most parts of 2007, and you can say Ferrari may not quite have that, but they've definitely got a championship contender in that car. And yet, what's happening is, and certainly what happened with us, was that Lewis in himself realised very quickly that he was as quick as Fernando, on occasions even quicker, and didn't want to play second fiddle, didn't want to be the wingman, didn't want to have to settle for second best and back up this guy who he knew that he could be quicker than, and could therefore make a name for himself, could take race wins, and most importantly could challenge for the one thing that every racing driver has dreamt of forever. The holy grail in Formula 1 terms is winning a world title. Getting a shot at it just doesn't come round very, very often at all. And even when you do get a shot, it's the most indescribably hard thing to try and achieve. So it's such a rarity. And when Lewis had that opportunity, he grabbed it with both hands. He caused a massive upset within our team, not because of necessarily things he did wrong, but just because of his outright raw pace. The fact that, the team then couldn't necessarily just throw all their eggs into the Fernando Alonso basket, because on occasions he wasn't our quickest driver. On occasions, to get the best team result, it meant backing Lewis, or it meant giving Lewis the preferred strategy because he might be in front. And if you think at the modern day situation at Ferrari, that's exactly what we've got here, isn't it? We've got this young kid who nobody within Ferrari really expected to challenge Sebastian Vettel on a consistent basis, and yet he's already making Sebastian look average on certain days. He's showing a maturity way beyond his years. He's showing pace that that nobody necessarily assumed he would have straight out of the box. And on more than one occasion, he has been quicker than Sebastian. So as a team at Ferrari, why would they stick with this idea of backing Sebastian Vettel above all else? Yes, they said it publicly, and on one hand you can say, look, they've made a decision, they said this is what they were going to do, and they're doing it. Credit to them for sticking to their guns, but you've got to be adaptive in Formula 1. If the situation changes, you have to be able to change very quickly with it. Ferrari, if they continue in the path that they're going, are going to cost themselves more championship points by backing Sebastian over Charles than potentially if they were to do it on a race-by-race, a case-by-case basis, backing the quicker driver, putting the preferred strategy into the guy who manages to deliver on that weekend. So it rings a lot of alarm bells for me, and I really think that Ferrari will have to look internally at how they're managing this. And they've got new management, of course, in Binotto, who seems like a sensible guy. He seems like a kind of much more a guy with common sense, ruling with common sense. And I really like that as a change at Ferrari. Of course, the change higher up the ladder has changed as well. And so I think the whole structure at Ferrari is different. So they have the opportunity to change the way that they do things. What they risk, and this is what happened, of course, at McLaren in 2007, is they risk upsetting their main man, Sebastian Vettel. We upset Fernando Alonso beyond belief, as you all know, and the end result of that is well documented. So Ferrari will be aware of that. Do they want to upset Sebastian, or do they just want to do the best thing for Ferrari? And that probably is the biggest question they've got to ask themselves and find an answer to very, very quickly. You see, something that I learned, or we learned as a team in 2007 at quite a costly expense on our behalf, was that the team result is always got to be more important from a team perspective than any individual driver. And you know, there's a great argument to say we lost out on the championship in 2007 because we allowed our two drivers and then the two halves of our team around those two drivers to fight each other relentlessly. And that whole debacle in China of 2007 when Lewis wore his tyres out was a direct consequence of that. The drivers, you have to appreciate, will always do whatever they want to do. They will always look after number one. There's no driver on the grid, despite whatever any of them say, that will have the team interests at heart over and above their own. That's understandable. So from a team perspective, your strategies, the way you go about racing has to be centred around the team. And if the team result can be improved by switching focus from, even if it's a four-time world champion Sebastian Vettel, onto a young kid of Charles Leclerc, because on that particular day he might bring you a better result, that's what you've got to do. And that, I hope, is what Ferrari can appreciate and can realise very quickly, because as I said, in 2007 we learnt that the hard way. Now look, I'm definitely not saying that all races should be run under team orders, all teams should be imposing team orders for every situation. Of course I'm not. In fact, you know, Mercedes have been utterly dominant by not imposing team orders in most situations. You get the best out of your drivers 100% when you allow them to race, because that's what they want to do. What Ferrari are potentially in danger of doing with Charles Leclerc, who could well be the future, the long-term future of Ferrari, is restrict him too much, is upset him. You know, is make him angry, and when that anger kicks in, and inevitably, eventually it could well do, that can spill over to the rest of the team. And if that happens, that's what happened to us in 2007. The team splits itself apart, you don't win anything. So they've got to be a bit careful. You know, what you have to do when you're doing any challenge, setting yourself any task or challenges, you have to try and find a way. You set yourself out this task, this kind of way of doing things. You make up a plan, don't you, in your own mind, whether this is motorsport or anything you've got to do in your own daily routine. You set yourself out a plan of action of how you're going to achieve it, and then you set about that. And if something changes, if circumstances beyond your control change, which of course they always do at some point, then you've got to adapt, you've got to react, you've got to be able to kind of evolve and come up with a solution that's going to maximise the new set of circumstances that you're in. You know, Ferrari at the moment don't seem to be able to do that. They seem to have a plan in their mind, they're going to stick to it whatever happens, and unfortunately that's not going to work out well in the long term. I'd love to see Ferrari let their drivers race up until the point where they start interfering too much with each other, of course, just like Mercedes do, under strict guidelines of not to take each other out or to ruin each other's strategies or races. But then when the situation requires it, when something's happened and the best way to get out of that new situation is by imposing some team orders, no matter which way round that could be, the best team orders to get the maximum result for the team on that day, well then just do it, be decisive, do it. Don't worry about upsetting anybody, because at the end of the day, a driver has to accept and has to understand that the team needs to act in its own best interests. Right, I've almost reached my destination for lunch, so I've got to leave it there. But let me know what you think. Do you agree with me? Do you think Ferrari have kind of got it wrong? Have they backed the wrong guy? You know, do they need to be a bit more reactive, or do you think they've got it right? Do you think that Charles Leclerc potentially just needs another year or so of experience behind him before the team really backs him as their number one choice? Let me know what you think in the comments below. Like the video if you've liked it, and if you haven't already, subscribe to the channel, please. I'd really appreciate it. Ta-da!